Okay, let me know when you guys can hear me all right. Got that. I almost waited to see when someone would say I was late to start just because it almost doesn't feel right unless someone's accusing me of being late. But yeah, let me know. Okay, so someone in the Moore's Laws Discord, which again you get access to on Patreon, says the audio sounds good. And then in the live chat, let's see what kind of delay we are working with here, actually. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, there we go. So, as usual, I like to start the live stream by reminding everybody what this is. This is Loose Ends. This is where I go over everything that's been discussed for the past month on Moore's Law is Dead and things we'll be looking at over the next month. It's usually the last week of a month or the first 2 weeks of the following month, clearly the latter this time. And if you join the Patreon, you can submit questions for free ahead of time, which I will get through, but I will also jump into live chat questions as well. And so if you want to submit a tip just to support me, Gerard, Dan, Carbon Cry, Carrie, Jean-Philippe, a whole team of people that work on this kind of stuff, of course, you can tip us just for that. Like I see one here from LCC Gaming. Thank you for the tip. But of course, they'll also make your questions more obviously noticed as well. And as has become also a tradition of Loose Ends, I have a bunch of leaks and actually much more than usual in the beginning of this. And so I don't want to waste any more time. Let's jump right into the leaks. And the first one I'm going to start with is actually the 5060 Ti before I get to all of the AMD leaks. Okay, so here we go. All righty. And here we go. So let me write down the timestamp for this one. So I'm just going to quote this here from one of my better sources in retail. This person says that they can confirm that the RTX 5060 Ti's MSRPs were briefly viewable in their system. This is a major online retailer. And they were $379 for the 8 GB SKU and $429 for the 16 GB SKU. Now, this might not be final, though, but this lines up people with the stuff that we also saw on Twitter that I saw shared a bunch over the past week. And I think that's important to just point out that no, I cannot 100% promise you this is the final pricing. Like, it's actually almost impossible to ever 100% promise you final pricing on anything because the company can change their mind at the last minute. But what I can say is that the leaks out there about 380 and 430 for the 16 and 8 GB models of the 5060 Ti, that came from something very real. And so I can't promise you it's final. It's not like I have 5 sources telling me this is definitely the final price, but I can tell you that was the price logged into a lot of online retailer systems. And so it could definitely be true. Now, this is where we get to the bad news, though. Also, this source of mine told me that they must warn that AIBs have told them that the street price for these will likely land around $100 above MSRP. I mean, I was told that you should expect the 16 GB models of the 5060 Ti to often be above 500 up to $600, and that the 8 GB models will almost always be above like 450 or something. And that's because there's going to be no supply. I'm not kidding people when I say this. I was told it will be worse than the 5070 launch, which is already the worst supply of any Blackwell launch in the generation. In fact, this person specifically, this was them saying this, by the way. I mean, I came up with examples, but the examples they gave were the 2060 12 GB. I said, oh, like 3080 12 GB. They said, yes. These stealth launches, if anybody remembers from a couple generations ago, whereby there were rumors these things would launch. They did. And then, if we're being honest, most reviewers didn't even get some of these cards. I might be wrong, but my memory is Gamers Nexus had to buy a 3080 12 GB, and their review for it wasn't out till a few days after the launch. So that is what I'm looking at here for the 5060 Ti. Were it to be at MSRP, I'd say it's okay. And especially, I will say, if the 5060 Ti, which I expect to have performance, by the way, around a 7700 XT, were that to be priced around $400, I'd be like, okay, so better ray tracing than the 7700 XT, more RAM than the 7700 XT, same performance, but for a lower MSRP. It's not perfect, but honestly, I could see that card being pretty popular. But once you get above 450, and especially if it is going to be on average above $500, this is not even worth discussing because this is going to place it, I mean, without ray tracing weaker, with ray tracing maybe a little better, but kind of at 7800 XT tier at best, even though most likely it'll be a little weaker with the same amount of RAM. What, 3 years later, for the same price. So the best you could say of the 5060 Ti is complete pricing stagnation from the 7800 XT from years ago. And for being honest, it's probably going to be weaker and on average cost more. So this seems like a complete joke to me. The 8 GB model as well being $380. I mean, look, what do you want me to say? I've been raging about 8 GB cards since the 3070. I think that is a complete and utter joke as well. And I think gamers are going to reject that. I mean, I don't even know what I would put a 5060 Ti 8 GB at, because it's weird how it's like last gen high end, higher mid range performance, but without enough RAM. I guess 329 maybe, but if we're being honest, no 8 GB card should be above $300. And so there you go. Like, yeah, Nvidia's MSRP is going to be a bit more aggressive than I think some people were expecting, most likely. Again, not 100%, but most likely. But at the same time, you're not going to be able to buy it. It's going to have horrible supply. I mean, I even reached out to some reviewers. One of them, even though this thing supposedly launches in less than a week, doesn't have one to this day. Another reviewer said that they got one, but that there were weird things around it. Like, this launch doesn't really feel like there's just something off at Nvidia with this. So there you go. I mean, if you can get one for $429, considering what's going on with tariffs and stuff, I would say that's not the worst thing, but don't expect to be able to. And if this does go above that price, this is where I want to get to the next leak, actually. So let me go back over here and put down a new timestamp. Again, a lot of leaks today for this live stream. All right, let me move on to the next one. So this person here told me something that we've kind of been seeing in other places a lot, but I think, this really says it all. I asked this week to another retailer source, not the same as the other one, is Blackwell selling? And this person said that the 5090 sells out instantly. But besides that, nobody wants Blackwell GPUs above MSRP. And that's interesting. And this shows you that maybe something is uh, changing in the GPU market in mindshare, because people are willing to buy apparently RDNA 4 cards. They're willing to buy the 9070 XT above 700. They're willing to buy the 9070 non XT above 600, but nobody wants the RTX 5070. I mean, if we're being honest, sometimes even oh, wait a sec here. 1 second. Nobody wants the 5070 even at MSRP. And I can say that, uh, Video Cards said that this is the first time ever in their article. This is not the first time ever. I've been seeing the 5070 go below MSRP now for a week or two. And on top of that, I think it needs to be pointed out that outside the UK, I found the 5070 to be in stock at MSRP for hours a couple of times. No joke. Here it is. Here's a screenshot. Now, I didn't run with this story because this would have had to have taken up space in a leak I wanted to do about the Nintendo Switch 2 and Zen 6. So I didn't think this really met the cut and wasn't as important or interesting or unique to talk about. But I think it's worth, like, whenever someone says, holy crap, the 5070 is going to or below MSRP. Weeks ago in the US, this was just sitting there at MSRP. And in the UK for weeks, I've been able to find it occasionally below MSRP, including now. So I think something really big is happening here, people. Genuinely. We are genuinely seeing a change in mindshare. We are seeing gamers go, fuck you, Nvidia. I don't want the 5070 with 12 gigabytes, even at MSRP. Certainly, some people are buying it. I know it sold out on launch day, but you have to understand that the 5070 had less supply than the RTX 3090 did at launch. So selling out means absolutely nothing. And that's crazy. And it's funny because this comes by last year. I swear everybody was just writing off Radeon like they're dead for good. And yet here we are. Nvidia has said, hold my beer, and is doing everything they can to lose their fans. And it's having a material effect. Nvidia is not invincible. So there you go. And again, it's like, I just can't recommend a 12 gigabyte card. I think above $400 anyways, pretty much. So it's just interesting. It's interesting to see the knock-on effects of Nvidia's mistakes actually start to catch up with them. Obviously, this is in a time where prices are up, where there's no supply because of Nvidia, but also because of now tariffs. And so maybe that will change in a year if, like, all of a sudden their supply, things are at MSRP. And I expect they will to a degree, but I can't think of a time in my life where gamers wouldn't buy AMD, where gamers wouldn't buy Nvidia above MSRP in large numbers, but they would buy AMD. That tells you something's going on here. And again, I really just think it's the everything. It's the fact that Nvidia's fucked with their fans since Turing. Turing was overpriced. Ampere had fake pricing and no supply for a while, and then that they killed off EVGA. Lovelace was way overpriced, and now Blackwell had fake pricing yet again with the worst supply I've seen. Yeah, and any GPU launch in my life, this is the worst supply I've seen sustained from Nvidia. And when you take all of that goodwill and burn it, the only reason people would keep buying from you being Nvidia in this case, is because you keep having the best products. But can't really run PhysX on Blackwell. Tons of black screen and driver issues. All of a sudden, AMD has an upscaling tech that's competitive with Nvidia. And I think they lose that magic sheen. I think you get to this point where people go, well, wait a second. What is the NVIDIA tax? Why am I paying this NVIDIA tax? For worse drivers? For unstable drivers? To not run some of my older games as well as a 4090 can for some reason? Why would I buy NVIDIA? So I think it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see, and I, of course, hope that more supply happens, that cooler heads prevail. Shall we say more competent heads prevail when it comes to the tariffs and how that concludes. But if all that does happen, I will be excited to watch very closely if when Nvidia is in supply, a good supply at MSRP, if AMD also is at the same time, does it actually still go to where AMD keeps taking market share? Because if that happens, we're looking at a huge shift in the market here in mentality. And you don't see those that often, right? You saw it with like Intel and AMD, and that took years to get there. But with how quickly NVIDIA is burning goodwill, you wonder if it could happen in the GPU space, even if NVIDIA is more dominant than Intel was. All right. Now, let me put down another timestamp here. I'm going to now get to the leak that all of you, for the most part, I'm guessing, were most excited for. So let me see here. Go back over here. Oh, and of course, can't see it right now, but I better change my background to red for consistency. All righty. Let's see. Here we are. So here is the leak for the 9060 XT, the 9070 GRE, and I didn't even mention this before I started recording, the 9050 XT. So let me just write that down again, what I'm doing here. All right. So let's go through it. Most of this has already been leaked by this channel, Moore's Law is Dead. So I'm not leaking all of these details today like they're all brand new. I mean, I think I said it would have 32 compute units a year ago. I don't remember. But I think for completionist sake, we should show everything. So here's the rundown. RX 9060 XT, 32 compute units. So yep, just like I said it would be. By the way, a lot of people, I want to say this, everybody, a lot of people would not say how many compute units there were until like a month ago. And I was outspoken saying it will be 32 CUs. And the reason there's a rectangular die for Navi 48, which is in the 9070 XT, is because they doubled Navi 32, which means it has to be 32 compute units. But I digress. Let's get back to it. 32 compute units, 128-bit bus. I believe this was confirmed over a year ago. 16 or 8 gigabytes of RAM, just like has been widespread leaked all over the place by now. 19.5 gigabit per second or 20 gigabit per second GDDR6. Now, this is something, this third point here about RAM speed, that I actually pushed back on my sources a little bit because it surprised me. But supposedly, AMD may mandate 20 gigabit per second or faster for the 8 gigabyte model to try to make up for some of the performance loss by going to, let's be honest, not enough RAM with 8 gigabytes. Personally, my guess is they will just not maintain that, and they'll just say 19.5 gigabit per second for either or faster, at least eventually. Like sometimes you see these companies launch a product with these specs required, and then eventually AMD just starts letting people sell cut down 580s as that should really be 570s as 580s because they're clocked faster. So eventually I would expect them to loosen that RAM requirement. But at least as of now, that's what I was told by at least one source. So I think that's interesting. Either way, though, I don't think you should read too much into that. RAM speed's almost equal there, 19.5 versus 20. Just know you might get either depending on the model. 150 to 200 watt TDP, nothing crazy there. I believe originally it was supposed to be like 175 or something is what I was told, but they may push the clock speeds even higher to try to be able to get really good reviews for this thing, especially because supply is so low. You might as well just get the highest performance you can. Who cares about efficiency? Now, this goes to the performance part now. This whole time I've been saying that the 9060 XT will perform between a 4060 Ti and a 4070, between them. And that seems to be like it'll be smack in the middle of that. If you look up Tech Power Up and look at what that means, I'm basically hearing this will be, I don't know, 5 to 12% weaker than a 7700 XT, but, probably, a solid at least 10% faster than like the 4060 Ti. So again, you're getting something here that is not quite a 7700 XT, at least not based on what I'm hearing recently, but is stronger than the old $400 cards. Now, I say $400, and that's exciting. Let me actually skip down a little bit here. And it's the pricing that surprises me a little bit. I am told that it might cost below $400, that this thing really might be 329 to 379 for the 16 gigabyte model. And so, yes, look, I think a lot of us were hoping this thing would manage to match or beat the 7700 XT. But if it's like 330, who cares? I mean, if you think about that, they're giving you, what would that be then? Like maybe 20 to 30% more performance than the 7600 XT with the same amount of RAM for the same price, or maybe a little more. Like it could be 350 or something. I think that's really good, actually. I think that's really good. Now, the 8 gigabyte model, I'm told, let me be clear about the pricing here. I've heard that probably not 379, probably closer to like 350 for the 16 gigabyte. And although I have a price range here because they haven't made the final decision, the 8 gigabyte model, it sounds kind of like 299, which I don't have much to say. The most I can say about AMD launching this, if they do price the 8 gigabyte card at $300, is that they are giving you better than the 4060 Ti for 300, which is 4060 pricing plus like 40% performance. A lot of people are paying 450 for the 4060 right now as it runs out of stock. So I go, yeah, I mean, look, on paper, that's a fair price, right? That's an absurd amount of performance for 1080p, but that's the problem I have, is that is an absurd amount of performance for 1080p. I mean, where does that put that at? I mean, above a 2080 Ti, like 3070 Ti performance for $300, that's overkill for 1080p, but you're only going to be gaming in 1080p because it doesn't have enough RAM for anything more. So I guess if you game in 1080p and you don't think you need 16 gigabytes, have fun playing it low at 400 frames per second. But I don't know. Maybe a lot of people will do that, though, considering they might use this for esports. So that's all I have to really say is I can make the argument for why something this powerful for like $300 is fair. Having said that, I still wouldn't recommend it. I don't think anyone should be buying 8 gigabyte cards anymore unless they're absolutely dirt cheap. All right, let me move on over here then and continue going down the info. So release is supposedly going to be April 24th. Again, this type of stuff can change day to day, so I'm not going to double down, but that is a specific date I was given, is April 24th, and it's definitely launching quarter two. Of course, I think I was one of the first people to leak that this was launching in April, so I do expect it this month, but technically I can still only promise you this quarter, and you should expect it like, what is that, then a week after the 5060 Ti launches. Another thing, hardware encoders. So I did see a tweet about that online, or I actually received a question from a patron for this episode about that, which made me reach out to a source. And here's what I can say about the lack of hardware encoders. So first of all, nobody I've talked to says that they're 100% sure that it will lack hardware encoders. What I can say is that some of my sources have spoken with AMD representatives, and anytime they ask about what encoder support it will have, they tend to dodge the question. So what that tells me is I can't promise you which way that will go, and I'm not going to claim I can, but I can tell you it seems like AMD may not include them. Now, what do I think about that? Honestly, a lot of APUs come with hardware encoders now, and remember, basically everything on AM5 is an APU. So most AMD systems, or Intel for that matter, they have encoders built into Arrow Lake. This won't matter. You can just use those encoders. It doesn't really matter. And it will make the die space smaller. Now, of course, if you have something like Zen 3, that might affect you to a degree, but anyone later, it's not a big deal. I don't know. I think it's a little silly personally. I'm 50-50 on this. On the one hand, I think it seems like a silly thing. I'm not sure how much die space this really takes up. On the other hand, if this allows AMD to basically give you an almost RX 6800 16 gigabyte for like 350 and high supply because the die is so small, beggars can't be choosers in this market. At least they're doing everything they can to make this thing as cheap as possible. And so I don't think it will really affect most people. But beware if you're someone who would buy this for something like that, that yes, those rumors might be true. All right, now let's get back to the leak here. And so, yeah, there you go. It's basically an almost RX 7700 XT, but with more RAM for a really aggressive price. And it's supposed to have really, really good supply, better supply than the 9070 XT. I think that's incredible news. And again, this plays into something I keep saying. If you need a graphics card now, you're someone, who has a 1060, this thing here is going to be like way, 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 way faster with modern features, with ray tracing support that's decent, can use FSR4, Pascal can't, use even DLSS. So I think there will be heavy supply at launch. It will be possible to get one, although the demand will be crazy. Get this now. You've already seen what's happened to the 9070 XT. I hear nothing about Nvidia increasing supply substantially. I have heard they are, like it's 10% more weekly now than it was before. 10% more of like a handful of cards a week to Amazon or something is nothing. So this will sell out. So if you need a new graphics card because of tariffs, I would really, really, really recommend you get this if you don't have something stronger already. All right, now let's put down another timestamp here and get to a few more little fun goodies. So first of all, just to be clear, I have heard no mentions of a 9060 non-XT. Nothing. I've only heard 9060 XT for, again, probably 350 or something, and 9060 XT 8 gigabyte for probably 300 or something. I've not heard about a 9060 non-XT, so I am under the impression there won't be one. However, maybe there could be a 9050 XT. This is what they would finally do with the yields that have to be cut down. Although it must be noted, I don't think there will be a lot of those. Yields on TSMC 4 nanometer are already better than 6 nanometer. If you'll remember, the 7600 and the 7600 XT are both not cut down. The 7600 XT just is the yields that clock faster. And that's because even on 6 nanometer, they had to cut down almost none of them. And now here we are with 4 nanometer, which is even better yields. I don't think they're going to have to cut down a lot of these. But if they do get enough, I've heard they're considering a 9050 XT, but it isn't guaranteed. No one is sure that's going to happen, so we'll see. So don't wait for a 9068 gigabyte. It would be a 9050 XT, probably for like, I don't know, 229 if I had to guess, but that's me guessing. I don't know a price. All right. Also, RX 9070 GRE. Yep, I'm told, I don't know the price, but I'm told this is coming. 48 compute units, 12 gigabytes of RAM, 18.5 gigabit per second GDR6 or faster, compared to the 9070. I guess that would probably make that about 20-30% weaker, which where would that put that? Probably around 7800 XT performance, maybe a hair below that, or yeah, somewhere around there. I don't know what price it would be. I would, I guess, put it at 450, but even then, I don't know, maybe 390. I have no idea what they're going to do because on the one hand, this is going to go right up against a 5060 Ti and probably beat it. On the other hand, it only has 12 gigabytes of RAM, so I don't know where they would really price that. Again, it's probably going to be mostly for the China market. But there you go, 48 compute units, 12 gigabytes of RAM. Expected to be like 20% weaker than the 9070 non-XT. And then is that everything there? And that's it. There we go. We got it all done. I finally got through all of those details. And so now we can start opening up the floor to questions. And so get those tipped questions in now. And I will start compiling them and going through them in a minute. But I will say that before I do that, an ad from Micro Center trying to get something really cool before the economic system melts down. Well, no better place to do that than Micro Center if it's PC components. And all April long, Micro Center is having an Apple sales event. Micro Center is opening their newest store in Santa Clara, California as well. If you sign up at the link below, you can receive a 128 gigabyte flash drive for free. You don't even need to be a new customer. A lot of these are sometimes like if you're a new customer, get access to whatever. You don't need to be. You can be a big old fan of Micro Center. If you happen to be in that area, sign up for the opening. Get a 128 gigabyte flash drive for free. Also, Micro Center is running a GPU trade-in program. You can bring in your old GPU if you purchase it at Micro Center and receive an offer the same day if you want to upgrade to a 9060 XT in a couple of weeks, of course. And then they also will help you recycle old tech, and they have a tech news page as well, so you can keep up to date with all of the newest releases. Again, we're going to get into it in the questions now, but I just want to say very upfront, I don't say anything that I don't mean, I do mean I think now is a good time to upgrade if you've been waiting. I'll be saying that over and over. You'll find this will become a pattern this episode. If you are looking to upgrade, again, if you're happy with what you got, don't waste money. Things will always get better eventually, whatever. Or usually will get better eventually. We'll see. We'll get to that. But what I will say is if you are someone, and I consider myself in this, I'm actually building a new desktop over here with Zen 4 X3D, it turns out. I'll tell you talking about that a lot in the coming months, why I chose that and what it is. But if you're someone, and I'm one of these people that was like, I don't necessarily want to upgrade from Zen 3, for example, right now, but I will be upgrading in the next 2 years, without a doubt. I have a motherboard from 2019. Can you believe that? People's like 6 years old. I'm not going to wait. If I can get a good deal now, prices haven't skyrocketed yet, do it now. And I think you will get the best prices at Micro Center. So, this is me saying, again, I would be recommending Micro Center no matter what, but I am genuine when I mean this right now. Now is the time to do it, people. Now is the time to do it if you were going to upgrade in the next year. Anyways, just do it now. Don't chance it. All right. I have some Switch 2 stuff, but I think I'm going to skip through that to work through some of this mailbag. But I'm going to have a whole Switch 2 spiel as well. So let me first make sure I don't miss any more of these questions. So Mega Tech Guy writes in, thank you for the tip. And he says, is Intel still making GPUs going forward? I watch my ARC effectively canceled leak. I don't know. I don't have anything else to add. In that leak I put out a couple years ago, I said Alchemist was going to be a disaster. Take forever to roll out, which happened. The B580 didn't launch for like a year. Like they even pulled it from marketing materials for a while because I don't even know if they knew they were going to launch it. Battle Mage would be a limited bullshit release. It was. You couldn't buy it. There's one card. Where's Big Alchemist? Where's Big Battle Mage? Where's Alchemist Plus? All those leaks were fake. They're not coming. And with Celestial, I don't know. I'm sure Celestial will be in APUs. Will there be some 128-bit bullshit thing for driver development? Maybe, but go watch ARC effectively canceled. That video I made, I have nothing to add. It's all happened exactly like I said it would. And Intel's out of money. So they're never going to stop developing graphics IP. That's what I will say. Or if they did, that would be crazy. That'd be even worse than what I thought would happen. Or should I say what I was told? Well, both would happen. But I wouldn't. The people who are waiting for Big Battle Mage to beat the 5090, how do they look smart right now? That's my advice for you if you're asking about Celestial. Don't ask me about it. It's not important. If something changes, I'll let you know. I think that's the best way I could put it. Confused. Ooh, of course, YouTube jumped around. There we go. Confused Council writes in, thank you for the tip, and says, a while back I asked if Nvidia had become the next Intel with marginal gen-on-gen gains, and you said no. After Blackwell, have you changed your mind? Ooh, I love that question. Yeah, and I remember saying that. People would ask me that all the time. Has Nvidia become Intel? So not in the same way at a minimum, right? Think about how bullshit Intel was, people. With Intel, they didn't even increase the IPC for a while there. They like what Skylake to KB Lake to Coffee Lake to Coffee Lake again to Comet Lake. No IPC increases, or at least minimal. And what was that? I think Skylake, wasn't it 2015 or 2016 when it came out? And then didn't Rocket Lake come out 21, 22? So that's like 5 years of zero IPC increases. I don't know. Nvidia isn't close to that, guys. So have they become Intel yet? No. Can I see a world where that happens over the next few years? Yes, I have changed my mind on that, though. It hasn't happened yet. So I guess you could argue maybe I haven't changed my mind yet, but I could see this happening. And I'd put out that short search Moore's Law is dead, Nvidia freezes performance no 6090 for you or whatever it was. Like I outlined this point of like, The 2060 Super to the 3060 was marginal improvements in performance. And it was a fluke they gave it 12 gigabytes. And in fact, I kind of think Nvidia regrets doing that. And then you go from the 3060 to the 4060. Again, marginal improvements. If the 4060 had 12 gigabytes of RAM, I think it actually would have been a solid 25% uplift. But it really, because it has less RAM, ends up kind of a wash, maybe 10% better. And then you go and look at the 5060 now. I think the 5060 will be decently faster than the 4060, but still only 8 gigabytes of RAM. There will be plenty of scenarios where the 3060 wins. So you can see it. NVIDIA's basically frozen what they're willing to spend and what margins they're willing to give up in the 60 class. They did that first. 2060 Super to 3060 to 4060, basically nothing. Every now and then they increase it, but not often. And if they use a better node like 4 nanometer instead of 8 nanometer, they give you less RAM to make up for using a better node. They're not willing to spend any money on these people anymore. It's frozen. Then they move on to the 5070, and look what's happened. I mean, if we're being honest, the 3070 to the 4070 is like a 30% kind of uplift. It's mostly the RAM doing the heavy lifting there. 3070 Ti to 4070 isn't a huge uplift. And then look at 4070 Super to 5070. It's frozen. So now they've frozen the 70 class, and they're using a die that's like a third as big as the 5090. They used to give you a die most of the size for 70 class, then half the size. Now it's a third the goddamn size of the 5090. They've frozen the 70 class. And they're already starting to freeze the 80 class. The 5080, same die size as the 4080, same node, better RAM, marginally faster, like 15-20% faster. You can already see that the 6080, there's a chance it won't be much, like it'll be 10% faster than the 5080 if they even give us that. And that's all I'm saying is like NVIDIA is moving up the stack, freezing things. Now, let's be clear. 10-20% performance improvements are better than the 5 to 0% Intel gave us. But I can see a world where it turns into this thing where like every gen they give you 15% more performance and they slightly raise the price. And maybe like the 6090 ends up either being so cut down it's barely the top die, or it isn't even the top die. And I think we have to watch out for that. So yeah, look, I gave NVIDIA a lot of credit for, even if they raised prices, they kept raising performance massively with Lovelace. I'm not seeing that with Blackwell. And if they continue this trend, they're going to start smelling a lot like how Intel smelled to me 10 years ago. By the way, I see that we have over 1,200 people watching. Let's get to at least 1,000 likes, please. Every person watching this right now, please like the video. Also, double check that you're subscribed to Moore's Law is Dead on YouTube. Half of you aren't, according to the statistics. Subscribing helps a ton. Please like, please subscribe. All right, let me move on to the next question here. Confused Council writes in again, thank you. So what are you more excited about, the 5060 Ti or the 9060 XT? Oh, 9060 XT. And that's very easy for me to answer because you can buy the 9060 XT, right? Who gives a shit about the 5060 Ti? It's not going to have any supply. It's going to be overpriced. The 9060 XT is going to have its own pricing issues because of demand, but at least they're shipping a lot of them, more than the 9070 XT, apparently. At least that's what I'm hearing right now. So of course I'm more excited. I mean, honestly, the recent launches, what am I excited about? The thing you can buy, and that's going to be the 9060 XT. Let me put that down as a timestamp as well. All right, let me move on some more here to another question. BRC311 writes in. It says, today I got an open box unused 6800 for $450. Considering expected supply and demand for this level of performance, I expect the 9060 to sell out and then elevate in price. Should I have waited? I don't care about ray tracing. You know, on the one hand, the 6800 was buyable for $350 half a year ago at least, and I told everyone to buy it. Everyone give me credit, right? I was screaming about the 6800 every single live stream for months because I thought at 350 to 400, the 6800 16 gigabyte was going to be one of the best aging buys you could make in GPU history. You got it for more than that, but you still got it for less than it launched at, and you're basically getting what? Better than 4060 Ti performance for the same price as a 40, probably less now because of what's going on, but for maybe less than you can get a 4060 Ti for. So I don't know. What I would say is, did you need that graphics card? Then good. I don't think you screwed up. I think it's fine. And here's what I would recommend. If you feel bad, just try to get the 9060 XT on launch. If you see one for 330, 350 below 400, snag that thing, keep it, and then sell off your 6800. They'll be easy. And you'll get, the 9060 XT will be probably like 10 to 15% weaker than the 6800, maybe 20%, but then also have like probably 20% better ray tracing and use significantly less energy. Although the 6800 is pretty efficient. So, and it has FSR4 support. And the 6800 is never getting FSR4 support, not even when they port it to RDNA 3 because it's RDNA 2. So, what I would say is, you didn't make a mistake because you needed, what is it? What do they say? A bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. Like, you have it in your hand. You can use it right now. You're happy right now. Just try to get the 9060 XT. If you have buyer's remorse, you get it. You can sell the 6800 and you made out like a bandit. That's what I would say. I wouldn't pay more than 450 though, I don't think. Although, who knows? Maybe that's from a place of privilege. Maybe that's a good price in a month from now. We'll see what happens. Lustanda writes in, thank you for the tip, and says, I got a 3090 back in 2022 and water cooled it for $800. Okay. Should I wait it out for the next gen, or should I get what should I get now if I play 1440p high frame rates? Especially high frame rates, AMD is typically a bit better of that because they have less driver overhead than Nvidia. Try to get a 9070 XT. I bet you can get a 9070 XT for less than 800 right now if you pay attention. Certainly less than 900. And then you can probably sell the 3090 for more than that because it has 24 gigabytes of RAM. So if you're not using it for anything non-gaming, I would, again, sell the card after you have an alternative. Don't screw yourself over and use integrated graphics. Like, try to get a 9070 XT for a reasonable price, then sell the 3090 afterwards. I think that's worth looking into. I do. I think it is. All right, have we gotten through the tipped questions? I have. And so let me actually continue to run through. Let me see here. Should I keep doing the GPU or go into Nintendo now? Let's get Nintendo out of the way. Let's get Nintendo out of the way, and then I'll get to the tariffs and the GPU supply stuff. All right. So I wanted to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2 very briefly. Don't worry if you're not that interested, because I did an analysis video for the Switch 2, and in that analysis video, I would say it was mostly positive, maybe even forgiving of Nintendo, if you will. And the reason is, you have to understand there's two reasons, or there's multiple probably reasons for me to get excited about a product. The engineer inside of me likes a good design, not just good in terms of peak performance, but like well thought out. This is what I would do. And when I first started leaking stuff about the Switch 2, I don't know, 2 years ago, it's been a while. I mean, this thing should have launched a long time ago. I was like, I don't mind that it's on 8 nanometer with like Ampere Plus with some Lovelace power saving features. That's awesome. Nintendo on 8 nanometer, they'll be able to pump these things out at Samsung without supply constraints, which was a huge problem for the Switch, supply constraints. So I didn't mind 8 nanometer. It also made it cheaper. And Nvidia and Nintendo's an incredibly cheap company. And I liked that it had 15 or 12 SMs. That's 50% more than what the Steam Deck has with DLSS and ray tracing capabilities. That it would boost much higher when docked, so it can actually kind of do modern console-like gaming at 4K 30-ish or something, or whatever. Like, all of that was awesome. I liked all of those, like 12 gigabytes of RAM. No, not 16, but it's Nintendo. 12 gigabytes was Nintendo making sure it at least has more RAM than a Xbox Series S. And I thought this thing would age pretty well. And I still think it will, relatively speaking, for what it can run. And that's why I think I was pretty forgiving of some of the dumb things about the Switch 2 in my initial analysis video a couple weeks ago, or a week ago, maybe. I don't remember when it was. All right. It was a week ago, wasn't it? Just so much has happened in the news. It feels like it's been a year. It was a week ago only, actually. I like the design. Now, here's the problem, though. This thing should have come out 2 years ago. Put yourself in the mindset of 2023. Especially if it was early 2023. Were the Switch 2 to have launched early 2023, in other words, a year and a half before the PS5 Pro is even out, I think this thing would have sold like hotcakes. I think people would have gone, "Oh wow, the Steam Deck's only been out a couple years or something. This is better. It can run Nintendo games. Look at it. It looks better than it looks as good or better than a Series S sometimes. This thing's amazing on the go. They did what Microsoft should have done with their APU and mobile before Microsoft did it, and it would have been great. But 2 years have passed. We don't just have the Steam Deck and the Steam Deck OLED. We now also have Asus and Lenovo and all different types of handhelds. I know they will cost more, right? Like a Strix handheld is going to be $1,000 or something. But I can promise you that Strix handheld is going to beat the ever living shit out of the Switch 2 in performance. And from what we can see, maybe even have a better battery life. And so I just think the Switch 2 was meant for 2 or so years ago. And Nintendo sat on their ass and tried to milk the Switch 1 for too long. And then now they're doing this. And then it gets worse. And then it gets so much worse. And here's why. They want to get away with $90. Like, let's forget the price of the console here. $90 for this, for the games, is ridiculous. You know, my girlfriend plays her Switch every week. I know she was excited for the Switch 2 ever since I started telling her what I was hearing from my sources about it. And she's like, I'm going to reward myself. I'm going to get a Switch 2. That's going to be awesome. Once she saw the games are going to be $80 to $90 and the console was $450 in the US, she said, I'm not so sure anymore. Think about how bad that is. That's like me saying I don't want the 5090, and I don't. Who should want a 5090? A tech enthusiast who uses it for work. That's me. And if I don't want a 5090, that means Nvidia fucked something up bad. My girlfriend is the exact target person who would want to Switch 2, and she's not sure she wants one. And so I'm having a second thoughts here. It's like, okay, yeah, I like the design of the Switch 2, but I'm starting to think, like, is this a 3DS situation? Because I'm seeing a lot of angst out there and consternation regarding this thing. And I can't see. You tell me in the comments right now in the live chat. Can any of you see a soccer mom going into a Best Buy this holiday season, a holiday season that will almost certainly be a recession, and go, oh boy, the new Switch is $100, $200 more than what I paid for my kid's Switch, and the games are $90? So what? Does Mario look that much fucking better, people? I can't see a soccer mom looking at that and going, ooh, Donkey Kong looks like it's worth $90 now, but it wasn't before. Like, this is the worst messenger for a price increase in games, right? I think Sony could maybe get away with it, like GTA 6, Fallout 5, The Last of Us Part 3. These are all games that will look next gen, be next gen, have next gen features. I don't see anyone looking at a $90 Donkey Kong game and going, yeah, this looks like quadruple A next gen. This is like Red Dead Redemption 3. I should pay $90 for this. And so I'm starting to wonder if Nintendo really, really, really screwed the pooch on the Switch 2. And that and look at, like, they announced the Switch 2 on the same week Trump announced tariffs, and they acted like they were surprised. Well, you're the one who chose to announce it when the US president was going to make these anti-pricing initiatives, and why did you why did you announce it on, like, the same day? Like, you didn't conceive a Nintendo that this might happen? And so there's something's rotten in Denmark here, I think, with Nintendo. They seem completely asleep at the wheel. None of my sources I can talk to, like the Nvidia people said this SoC for the Switch 2 was done like 3 years ago. And none of them that I am talking to can figure out why it took so long to come out and why it still doesn't really seem to be ready. Like, it's really odd, and I'm getting bad vibes here. They still don't have a trophy or achievement system for the Switch 2. I don't know, guys. This kind of seems like, who wants this for this price in a recession? And I want to double down on this. People, hated on the PS3 for how expensive it was. And they say there was a recession, blah, blah, blah. But what people forget is that the PS3 actually launched at the peak of a stock market bubble when everyone was spending money like crazy. 2006, money, 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 baby. And the PS3 actually kind of made sense to go for a $600 console when the market was at the all-time high. And by the time there was a recession, it had pretty much already dropped to $400 or even $300. And so it really wasn't an issue. They fixed it by the time they needed to. Nintendo launching a $450 or more, apparently, console with $90 games in 2025 is like if Sony launched like a $700 console in 2008. Like, that's the dumbest freaking thing I've ever heard of. And I think Nvidia, and I keep Freudian slip. I think Nintendo is getting way too cocky when I look at this. The more I think about it, it just doesn't make sense. Like, they're overcharging devs apparently for their cartridges, so devs are like using the cheaper ones as key cards. They want to charge $90 for, or whatever they want to charge. I don't know if it was 80 or whatever, for Donkey Kong or Mario Kart World, whichever games they're actually doing the new price for. and they haven't given dev kits to devs until like now, maybe. So like they're all behind. I don't know. I think this might be a 3DS situation where Nintendo has to massively course correct. I'm not going to say Wii U yet, but I'm just sitting here going, I don't know. The Nintendo curse may continue. Like Nintendo seems incapable of having 2 generations in a row that are massive hits. And I'm starting to sour on this quite a bit. The Switch 2. I like it. Maybe my girlfriend will still get it, but I think we will be in a recession second half of this year. And I don't see a lot of people paying $90 for Donkey Kong in a recession, people. I just don't. Especially, I mean, like, there's enough handhelds now where, and I usually don't like this argument because I like both consoles and PC gaming. But something PC gaming people often say is you'll save money on the games. I push back on that some. I'm not going to get into why, but $90, I think you will save money just getting a Steam Deck and getting games on Steam. I think you will. I think when the games are $90, you will. This is absolutely ridiculous. But again, I don't know what they think they're getting away with. Okay. Intel Fanboy writes in and says, so with Nintendo games now at $90, are we at a new normal for pricing on all new games or just certain ones? I'm unsure, honestly. I definitely think that the PS6 was going to charge at least $80 for games, or will. Still, I do. Especially when it comes to inflation, though. Like, give it 2 years, more inflation, more trade wars. I think $80 is definitely happening. But I don't know that it was going to go to $90, and I'm still not sure where they'll go. And again, I think you can get away with $90 for Fallout 5 and GTA 6, and again, do a Last of Us game. I don't know if a God of War, because those games are a little shorter, like a new big Halo that has co-op, actually has co-op, doesn't kill it before it comes out, actually has co-op, a big online camp. Like, I think those games can probably demand $80, $90, but I don't see every game going that expensive in the future. I think without a doubt this is going to happen, but I don't think it's going to happen right away. I don't think you're going to see every game shoot to $80 or more this year. I think it will probably happen more with the PS6 and onwards, but by then there will have been more inflation anyway. So that's kind of how I see the situation. It's very hard to be sure about anything anymore, though, with how things are going in the world. I'm just being honest with you guys. All right, now let us pivot back to some more GPU and tariff talk. And let me jump back into the live chat here. I see another tipped question. Again, keep them coming. From Tech Kev, who says, so I've bought 8 GB cards since the RX 480. Now I'm on a 24 GB 7900 XTX. That must have been quite an upgrade. And I don't really see anything else worth upgrading. Will the next couple of gens not even go above 16 GB, or will we not go above that as the base? Where will the new standard be? I think it's too early to say for sure. What I would say is if the 5070 really does continue to sell badly, even at MSRP, even if supply improves, that's going to be a huge wake-up call to Nvidia that cut the shit. We're really not going to put up with 12 GB high-end, really mid-range to low-end cards is what the 5070 is anymore. We're not going to put up with 8 GB low-end cards. This has got to stop Nvidia. And my suspicion is that you're going to see them at least give 16 GB to the 6070, maybe more. And maybe we're going to see a Pascal-like situation where they actually do ratchet it all up. Like, I think the 6080 will probably have 24 GB of RAM. The 6090 probably still just 32 GB, or more than that, maybe. And then you're going to see the 6070 have at least, 16 GB, maybe 18 GB. Like, I think that's going to be alleviated. And remember, the 9070 XT is a mid-range graphics card. That's what it is. I guess you could say upper mid-range, lower high-end, because it turned out very well. But I think if AMD launches a Navi 48 Ultimate, like a 9080 XT, in a month or two, it could get more RAM than 16. And Tech Kev, have a 9 series, 79, like now it'll be called a 7090 XTX, back then 7900 XTX. And so if there's a 9080 XT that comes out with 24 or 32 GB of RAM, I don't know. I mean, What that tells you is the high end is still going to keep going above 16 gigabytes from the AMD camp, probably, and the mid range will at least be at 16 gigabytes. And I think we have to see how this plays out, but I think there's going to be some backlash here on Nvidia. We're already seeing it. No one wants 12 gigabyte cards anymore. They just don't, unless they're dirt cheap. And I'm curious to see if 8 gigabytes gets rejected even harder. Hard to say though, because the 4060 does still sell apparently. Shaman writes in and says, "Hey Tom, love the 9070 XT, but Rock'em not being ready for it is a killer for me. Making inferencing clients that can do some gaming. How close to a 4070 Super 4K card with DLSS, etc. Do you see the 5060 Ti seeing any games run?" Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting it to be like 8 to 20% weaker than the 4070. So where does that put that? Like, so is that a 4K card? I mean, yeah, that puts it around 6800 performance, 7700 XT performance. Certainly 4K 60. You're certainly doing 4K 60 easily. Um, and 4K 120 with DLSS turned on and a couple settings turned down. Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, I have a 4090. I now have a 4K 240 hertz monitor. No problem gaming around 4K 200 with it. Yes, I might have to turn on DLSS balance. I think it's worth it to hit that high frame rate in 4K. And so if that can do that, something that's like half the performance or a little less can probably do 4K 120. So as long as you're not expecting 4K 240 out of it, I've long thought that with reasonable settings, 4K isn't as hard as people make it out to be to run for a very long time. I mean, even when I had a Radeon 7 in 2019, 2020, well, both years probably, I had a 4K 120 monitor eventually, and I generally gamed around 4K 90 or something. And the Radeon 7 back then was like, I guess high end, but not crazy. It certainly wasn't the strongest card on the market. The Titan RTX would have been like 40% faster, 50% faster. So, yeah, I mean, look, you'll be able to do it. Just remember, this is a low end card. For the only reason you're doing 4K 60 is because 4K has been around for a decade, right? It's not because um like even the low end is super powerful. It's just 4K isn't that new, and people don't want anything better than 4K right now. So that's what I would say. Um, BRC311 writes and says, "Thank you for the advice. If I can snag a 9060 XT at or near MSRP, I may do that. I'm upgrading from a 4068 gigabyte. I need the VRAM and better 1440p raster, so I'll get 250 to 350 for the 4060 for sure." Yeah, I would just try to get the 9060 XT if you haven't gotten the 6800 yet. That's what I would recommend. Let's see. Mr. W writes in and says, "If Nintendo had gone with AMD for the Switch 2, would you have expected similar performance to the Nvidia or better?" Well, let me put down a timestamp for this. Take you down memory lane. AMD Switch 2. So, in my Switch 2 leaks about a year ago, look it up. It's the one where I put a GTA 6 character from the recent trailer on a Nintendo Switch mock-up. It's that green Nintendo Switch with the girl in the bikini from GTA 6 on it. That leak, I believe. And then the follow-up one that I did with a loose ends. And then I also did a Switch 2 update with an Arrow Lake leak. So you could search Arrow Lake Switch 2 Moore's Law is Dead and loose ends Switch 2 and Switch 2 leak Moore's Law is Dead. Those 3 videos will come up. So I don't remember exactly which one it was in. But in at least one of them, I talked, it may have been all 3, I talked about AMD bid on the Switch 2. They did. And what I was told by a contact at Nvidia is that I believe it was going to use TSMC 4 nanometer, and AMD's design was much more of a traditional APU. So, like, not necessarily as tailored to handheld as the custom SoC Nvidia made for Nintendo. Meaning, what AMD wanted was a 15-watt handheld with a big battery that's what they pitched to Nintendo, I should say. Not want to, that's what they pitched. That when you put it in the dock, it goes from 15 to like 25 watts. That's what AMD pitched, and that it would be stronger in handheld mode than what Nvidia was offering. But it would be more expensive. And apparently it would have, AMD almost won the contract. Almost. But why Nvidia won is their 8 nanometer pitch to Nintendo. Let's be honest, it was cheaper. That's really what Nintendo's looking for. They managed to power gate and downclock enough that they hit the minimum amount of performance Nintendo demanded. Maybe not a cent more than that, but they hit it, or percent more than that, but they hit it. They hit you know, they hit the level of performance Nvidia wanted. And so that's why they went with them. It would have been weaker. I mean, it is weaker than what AMD offered in handheld mode, but it also uses less energy and is a lot cheaper and can still boost pretty well in docked mode. And so, you know, would I've expected similar performance? I would have expected AMD's handheld to be more power hungry, but better and just kind of better. But they lost the bid to Nvidia because apparently Nvidia hit some level of mobile performance that they were happy with at a much lower price. And again, they were used to working with Nvidia. So, um, Shaman writes in and says, "Thanks, Tom. No question, just a tip. My question was for reasonable 4K with DLSS on the 5060 Ti, and you nailed it. Any news on Rock'em or GTA 6?" No, no, I don't know. I haven't talked to anyone about either of those things for a while here. Okay, and so that is through some of the tipped questions. Let me now get to some of the Patreon questions, which I just a friendly reminder here. Check out the link in the description to join the Patreon as well. We just put out an interview with someone at Micro Center during launches with a dev talking about why the PhysX issues with NVIDIA are actually a real problem. You're going to ask us questions for free. We're going to have Hogue on from Hogue's Law. He is a lawyer who will be going through the realities of the tariffs. Join now, and you will be able to submit questions tonight and throughout the weekend for that person for just $2. The lowest tier gets you there. And so please, when it comes to inflation, no inflation on Moore's Laws at Patreon prices. The lowest tier still gets you for just $2 access to the Discord to ask us questions, to the catalog of hundreds of die shrinks that include interviews and bonus videos that come out multiple times a month. Please consider supporting us on Patreon. It is the best way to show support. And by the way, at the right tier, you could have been asking questions for free for this live stream. All right. Chris Rich writes in and he says, "You previously raised the possibility of NVIDIA flooding the market with tiny low-end Blackwell parts. Any sign of this happening?" No. I mean, that was all speculation. At first I thought maybe there'd be a 5070 flood. Then I thought maybe there would be a 5060 Ti and 5060 flood. So far, it's a drought. There's no floods from Nvidia right now. They are ignoring the gaming market. And so I'm done speculating about that. I would still suppose eventually they'll do that with the 5060, but I have no proof they're planning to really support gaming at all. Nvidia is quickly becoming not a gaming company. Like, I'm just calling spade a spade on that one. That's what it's starting to look like to me, is that they're just not a gaming company anymore. And I don't need to get into the AI of it all and why they are. I get it. I'm just saying it's still kind of shocking how quickly they're pissing off and abandoning their most historical user base, shall we say. All right, let me put down a timestamp for these questions here. So KJM015 writes in and says, "Hey, Tom, with companies like Asus and Lenovo suspending shipments to the US for the foreseeable future, how bad do you think the supply situation is going to get for the PC market? With other companies follow suit, and which product segments will get hit the hardest?" It's going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible. These tariffs are horrible for gaming hardware. It's going to be very, 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 very bad. We've already seen Nintendo show issues, Asus. These aren't like First Framework and like Razer were pausing shipments to the US. Guys, Lenovo is a big fish. Asus is a big fish. And if they're suspending shipments to the US, and who knows, by the time this live stream comes out, maybe they will be doing it again and then not doing it 5 minutes later because of how chaotic all of this stuff has been. But it's very, 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 very bad. And there's a reason you keep seeing the markets go down even after the supposed suspending of tariffs. And it's because they're not suspended. There's still massive tariffs on China, even if you say that they are not there's a cutout for semiconductors. Really, then why is Asus and Lenovo suspending shipments? There's a lot of stuff that goes into making laptops, and just like having a cutout for Taiwan or something doesn't fix it. And this is all driving up shipping prices as well, and that's going to cause price increases even if you cancel tariffs today. And there's still 10% tariffs on tons of countries and tons of things. So prices are going up. Tons of products are going to get canceled for US users, unfortunately. It sucks. I don't like it. I don't know why you would like it if you're in the US, but it is the reality. So if you need something that you've been waiting to get and you thought you were going to get it this year anyways, I do have to recommend you get it, because I do think this is only going to get worse. And I have to say, for this holiday season, even if all tariffs were cut out in a week, which who knows? Clearly, there's no gumption in the current US administration. They're just blinking like crazy. Could happen. But all of this chaos, think about it this way. So, and I think we're going to start to see this come out a lot in quarter two earnings. When you ask a CEO, how many people should we hire this year? When should we launch this product this year? Like anything that's going to come out this holiday season, they were planning it. They're planning it now. They're like, we need this many shipping boats, this many components to be assembled here. And if they don't know what things are going to cost once they have to do that in a quarter or two, and they don't know, they're just probably not going to do it. And so even if this all was called off in a week, and who knows, it could be, the disruption to this holiday season is going to be epic. And there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. So that's all going to happen. Remember, people are freaking out in the markets right now before the effects of the tariffs have even really hit you. So what do you think it's going to be like in 3 weeks, a month, 2 months? So yes. Dark Side of the Force writes, and it says, just to chime in to say that if people really want to buy a laptop, especially with a dedicated GPU, they better act fast. 4090M, 4080M, they're already running low. 4070M, 4060M already extinct. As for Switch 2, Nintendo DOG really have themselves to blame. They shelved their next gen because last gen was selling and did nothing during the last call of November. They missed multiple big game launches and now will be stone throwing for their price. Yeah, I know. I think we might see a Wii U situation again, but for different reasons this time. Yeah, I couldn't agree with more with all that. I don't remember specifically who that person is, but there are people in Moore's Law Said Discord. Again, join the Patreon to get access. Who work at Nvidia, work at AMD, work at Best Buy and Amazon and other retailers, micro centers, and they are sounding the alarms for a while now that this is just going to get worse. Cure Boom writes in from the Patreon. Thank you for your support. Hi, Tom. Hopefully this isn't too late to submit a question. For my question, when does it look like supply in the retail chain will reach a point that the RX 9070 is in stock most of the time and at nearly rationalizable prices, minus tariffs and other geopolitical stupidity? Well, that's a big factor, though. I built a PC in 2022 with a 7600X and a 6750 XT and promised that I would buy a new graphics card when RDNA 4 came out. I've been setting aside money since then for that new graphics card. Most of the time, any 9070 is still out of stock or at stock when I'm at work and bought out when I get home. The prices that I can see are always terrible. I could maybe justify swinging 670 for the Sapphire Pulse, but I can't easily bring myself to spend more than 700 for a 550 MSRP graphics card. And no, I don't live near a micro center. The nearest micro center to me is an entire state away. Heck, the nearest Best Buy is 2 hours away. Oof. Yeah, I don't know. It's like I just said, that whole spiel I just did about planning because of tariffs. I can't tell you when or if things will ever go back to MSRP because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And it doesn't seem like even the US president knows what he's going to do the next day. So we don't know. I would not bet on prices going back to normal. If, like, how much stronger will this be? Like, let me look here. It'd be like, let me look up 6750 XT. This is probably not worth you getting. It would have more RAM than a 6750 XT, the 9060 XT. Yeah, okay, so yeah, 6750 XT is basically square where 4060 Ti is. And if you add, yeah, so it'd be an upgrade. Like a 9060 XT would be more RAM, probably 10% more performance than your 6750 XT. I might just try to get that if I were you. Like it'd be a small upgrade, but RAM wouldn't be an issue anymore. You could do more ray tracing. You have FSR4, which will actually be a quite large. I do think that's worth pointing out, right? Like, for example, going from a 1070 to a 3050, which I believe are similar performance. Imagine if the 3050 had 12 gigabytes, though. You'd be like, okay, so I know it doesn't on paper seem like a big upgrade. 1070 to 3050, 12 gigabyte. But now RAM isn't as much of an issue for me anymore, and it can run DLSS, and that's huge. Like that DLSS or FSR4 in the case of the 9060 XT upgrade, that's kind of another 20% throw that on top of there too. So that's what I would say. I would say maybe try to get the 9060 XT in a couple weeks if you can. Otherwise, I've looked at Best Buy and yeah, 9070 XTs are getting close to 1,000. I, I'm not saying I like this. I'm just telling you the reality. The reality of the situation I see in front of us is if you get a 9070 XT not below 700, below 800, you're lucky. And if you get a 9070 non XT below 750, you're lucky. And so if that is the level of performance you want and you've set aside money for that, I would buckle and just get that Kira Boom. That's what I would do. And then I would just try to take some solace in the fact, let me see if make sure I don't put my foot in my mouth. But like I know graphics card prices are going up on eBay. Like, how much is a used 6750 XT? Really? Is it actually selling for this much? So here's what I would say, Cure Boom. Yes, if you want a 9070, it's probably going to be $700. But also, yes, if you would have tried to sell the 6750 XT used half a year ago, you would have got $200 for it. Now it looks like you get 400 to 500. So net on net, you're even. So I would just fricking get it and sell your 6750 XT for $400. That's what I would do. I think a lot of people need to consider that as well if they consider upgrading. Like if you have a 1060 and you're considering getting a 9060 XT, but you're not sure if it's worth it. If I look up 1060 on eBay, I mean, these things were going for nothing, but okay, I guess, yeah, they're going for like $80. I don't know if you would have got more than $50 half a year ago. And I think 8 GB cards are probably faring better. A little. But yeah, it seems like you want after Pascal though for the most part. But yeah, let's say you have a 2060. Plenty of people bought the 2060. It was a popular card. Yeah, you can sell a 2060 here for wow, seemingly $150 on eBay. You wouldn't have sold it for that much a year ago. And so it's like, I know, like if you see if you have a 2060 and you're considering getting a 9060 XT, for example, I think what you've got to go on release day, if you see a 9060 XT and you're like, I'm ready to pay 350, let's say that's the MSRP. And then you see it for 400, you need to remind yourself, I know it's $50 over MSRP, but are you going to sell your 2060 for $50 more than you would have a year ago? You're still getting a big upgrade. These are the types of things people need to think about right now where beggars can't be choosers in a market of scarcity. Again, not me saying it's good, bad. Tom say bad. Tom just explain what's happening and try to give the best advice. Don't kill the messenger. That is in a bad situation. Sometimes you have to choose from kind of bad to terrible. And I'm trying to give you the kind of bad, not the terrible advice that a lot of people I think are giving out there right now. Some people are giving pretty bad advice. I think a lot of people are sleeping on how much things are about to change globally over the next 5 to 10 years. Sheriff Lotfi writes in and says, hello, Moore's Law is dead. Hope you are well. I'm fine. I've got 2 questions. The first is, how much do you think the tariffs will assist in popping the AI bubble? Now, that might be the one good thing. I think a lot. I think it could really pop that bubble. The second is whether you think supply from AMD and Nvidia should be better when the TSMC factory in Arizona opens up, whether that will increase the price of GPUs and CPUs in the US going forward. It just depends how bad prices get, right? Like, if there's a bunch, if Trump blinks more and the prices stabilize but aren't perfect, I think you're going to have a situation where the 4 nanometer doesn't help that much, right? Like if you think about it, if prices go up 20%, it's going to cost more to make it in the US anyways. So I don't know. It'll probably help with supply if that's still an issue, but it's not going to make everything perfect. Having said that, if prices skyrocket, it can make a decent difference. But just remember, you have to order PCBs from other countries. Heat sinks are not made in the US. There's a ton of things that are still going to drive up the cost of that graphics card. But I mean, it can't hurt. It can't hurt the new supply in Arizona. Let me say this too about the AI bubble. I really do think that sucker could pop, especially with like rumors that potentially the tariffs came from feeding, nonsense into an AI engine, like Grok or something. Whether or not that even happened, the rumor itself, if there's a recession, can you imagine people out there like, wait, AI caused this recession? Even if it's just a rumor, right? Even if it's just a rumor. And then combine that with a bunch of investors going to AI companies like, all right, Bubs, market's crashing. Your product has to deliver now, or I'm pulling out funding. I have this Strix PC right here. I like it a lot for Minis Forum. It has a Copilot button right here. Here's a Copilot button. And it's kind of cool. I mean, sometimes it works. Sometimes it's complete nonsense because AI is half the time just completely wrong. But sometimes it can just answer a question better than Google can, mostly because Google's AI is garbage. But it doesn't use the neural engine. So I think there's a real question here on how useful AI is, how much the hardware we're using for it is actually necessary to do it well. And if there's a big recession, I think that AI bubble pops, baby. I think it pops hard. And who knows, maybe that will cause GPU prices to go down. John Wick Boomstick writes in and says, hi, Tom. Any new details about the ultimate edition of the 9070? Is the likelihood increasing or still undetermined if this will be in the markets? Expect me to say a lot more about, let me put down a timestamp for this actually. Expect me to say a lot more about the 9070 XT Ultimate Edition uh, this month. I think I'll finally have more info. And the reason I haven't leaked more details is simply because I don't want to leak something to you that's wrong. Because I'm sorry, when it comes to flagship GPUs, people will burn you at the stake if one thing is off. And so I don't see a point in really talking about it, except that from what I can tell, it probably still exists. What the question is how aggressive it is, because I've heard some wild things about what AMD may be trying to accomplish with it. And I don't want to confirm those things unless I can confirm those things. But from what I can tell, probably still a thing, this ultimate 9070 XT edition. But I think we need at least another week of me talking to people to make sure tariffs haven't screwed everything up or something. iDude writes in. Well, actually, let me get to some tip questions here. So Jinx writes in. Thank you for the tip. It says consoles often use GDDR instead of regular system RAM to maximize bandwidth for gaming performance. Why can't an APU in a Steam Deck or a gaming laptop? It can. I mean, they use. So there's multiple things here. If you're, give me a sec. There's a cartoonish moment to make fun of me about. Feel free to clip that. All right. Let me get to the GDDR6 thing. So I think you have to remember that the consoles aren't handhelds. They're not, right? And like the one that is, the Switch 2, does not use GDDR6 or GDDR7. And that's because while it's high performance and high bandwidth, it is not as efficient as going with LPDDR5X or LPDDR6. And so that would be why. And ultimately, they don't need more bandwidth, right? Like Strix Halo could have gone with GDDR7, but if they would have gone with GDDR7, there'd be more power consumption there, and they would have had as much capacity. Right now, AMD can give Strix Halo, what, like 192 gigabytes of RAM, at least 128 in some models already. You wouldn't do that with GDDR7. GDDR7 is maxing out with the same bus width at like what, 48 gigabytes or something, I think, if you were to clamshell it. And so there's very real reasons not to do that. You get higher capacity in a handheld or a laptop, better efficiency, and ultimately it doesn't have enough compute units. Like the PS5 Pro, what does it have? 60 compute units, 64 compute units or something? Like that's 50% more than Strix Halo, and that's why it needs GDDR6, and Strix Halo uses LPDDR5X. It has half the bandwidth because it has significantly less compute units that will be thermal limited a lot of the time. And so that's why. They could use GDDR6 in a laptop, but ultimately with how fast LPDDR5X and LPDDR6 is getting, I kind of think they're going to keep sticking with the more mobile-friendly RAM types. Let me see here. What is this here? So someone from the Moore's Laws at Discord said, wrong, Tom. Google has the best AI model. Now, I don't know if you're joking, JK but I shit you not. I was scheduling with a guest today and like setting up future guests a month out. And one of them is on Pacific Standard Time. I'm in Central Time. So that's a 2-hour time difference. It goes Pacific, Mountain, Central Time, 2-hour time difference. I asked Google like what time it was or something there, and it said something like 5 p.m. something like 5 p.m. Pacific time is 6 p.m. Central Time. That's what Gemini AI has less knowledge than a second grader when it comes to time zones. So JK Software, hard disagree on Gemini being good if it can't even get time zones correct. Okay, sorry. That's a good way to get me to rant, is to say Google AI is good. Let's see here. All right. More shopping advice. Here we go. Put down a new timestamp. iDude writes, and it says, posting as a separate conversation topic, I 99% plan to buy Zen 6 12-core X3D. With tariffs coming, though, is there any point in buying a cheap 7600X motherboard plus RAM to have the platform now, coming from a 3900X with 6800X at 1440p? Oh, you must mean 6800 XT. There is something about a redesigned memory controller. So the RAM from today possibly could not be in the sweet spot next year. Maybe, but you can get pretty fast RAM working, right? And RAM might be cheaper by then, right? I mean, maybe not, but I don't know. I wouldn't worry about that as much. Also, like when it comes to a sweet spot, I mean, can't you get DDR5 8000 running at least 7200, right? Running on AM5 right now. You're not going to 24 cores, you want 12 cores, and X3D doesn't need RAM as much. So I wouldn't worry about the RAM thing I do. What I would recommend since you have a 3900X is just get a 7700, something like that. Like, don't go to only 6 cores, like, make it an upgrade. Or, like, what let's see. I think this is important every now and then to check prices. Let me go to Micro Center and see what the current prices are. So, you can get a 9950X with 32 gigabytes of RAM for free for $520. But see, that makes me curious. What is a 9900X? So, a 9900X is $390 and comes with free RAM, dude. I don't know if you're close to a Micro Center, but if you are, I just want to compare that now to a 7600X. 7600X comes with only 16 gigs of RAM for $190. So let's do this price comparison, dude. Oh my God, with this thing. Well, hopefully that doesn't keep happening. Ugh, quite a goofy live stream, guys. Forgive me. But let's do the price comparison here, right? So the 7600X is 190. The 9900X is 390. So right, yeah, that's a $200 difference, and you get 16 gigabytes of RAM for free. I don't know, guys, right? Isn't that like how much money are you really saving? Like you're saving maybe $100, $150 to just go with 6 cores of a last gen instead. Like that's the Zen 4 versus Zen 5 12 cores. So if you were going to upgrade right now, dude, my advice to you would be just get the 12 core now. Like, right? Just get it now. Make it a full upgrade from a 3900X. It comes with 32 gigabytes of RAM for free. I don't think DDR5 6000 is going to be too slow to make good use of a Zen 6 12 core. So, yeah, just do that now. Like a lot of these, the sweet spots are the 12 cores because no one wants them. I think for obvious reasons. I think AMD overcharges for their 12 cores because they use 2 CCDs. Or you can get the 7900X. Does it come with free RAM though? No, for 330. I would get a Zen 5 12 core for 390 with like $100 of RAM for free. Just get that, dude. Upgrade now. Do it now. This is what I'm saying. Beggars can't be choosers. I wanted to wait for Zen 5 with Vcache 16 cores from like a minis forum motherboard, or wait for Zen 6. But ultimately, I am concerned I won't be able to get what I want in a year due to tariffs, at least not for the price I'm willing to pay. So I have an opportunity here where there's a minis forum motherboard, the BD790, I think X3D. It's still 16 cores, even though it's Zen 4. It has Vcache. It's $600 for a motherboard that comes with a 16 core with Vcache. And it has room for 2 PCIe Gen 5 SSDs. It comes with built-in Wi-Fi 6E, I believe. So if you think about all that, you're basically getting a $300 motherboard, a $500 CPU, and the cooling for $600. So yeah, look, it's not a Zen 5 X3D. It's not Zen 6, but I'm going to save money now before prices go up. That is my advice to you, dude. You could wait to get a $500, let's be honest, maybe $600 Zen 6 X3D 12 core. Or you could spend half that price now for a Zen 5 12 core that comes with RAM. Just do it now. You're not going to regret it. In a year or two, when Zen 6 comes out, let's say you get it for $500. You'll be able to sell your old CPU for at least $200. How much money are you really saving? The tariffs are not a joke. Buy now. iDude writes in again and says, Tom, I'm eagerly awaiting for the Strix Halo laptops, but I haven't seen a design that I want to buy yet. I only see that there are really two, right? The HP ZBook Ultra and Asus ROG Flow Z13. Would the more mainstream Medusa Point laptops have a lot more variety to choose from? So I guess I just keep waiting until I see a design that I want that is 3-6 months away, but then will be another 6 months to Medusa Point laptops. that are something like, well, so he goes on, but I think we get the gist of the question, right? Which is, when are more Strix Halos going to arrive? Is there a point in buying them if they're 6 months from now? If 6 months after that, there's Medusa point? My answer is, I've got my Hot Point laptop. Um, I got that early last year, and it's like, should I have waited for Strix Point? Well, guys, look, it turns out, again, this was a surprise to me, Hawk Point is like 20% better than Phoenix if you add it all up. Like the graphics really are better. It is much, much more efficient, apparently below 30 watts compared to Phoenix. And so you get something 20% better, but then look, Strix Point is like 30-40% better than Hawk Point. Okay, right. But Medusa Point, Gorgon Point might be 20% better than Strix Point, and Medusa Point will probably be 30% better than that. There's always going to be something better around the corner. AMD is not sitting still. They are not relenting on Intel's laptop market share. You're going to see a new generation from AMD and laptop every 9 to 12 months or something. And so there's no point in waiting. You wait for Strix, you want to wait, then Gorgon, then, it's just new stuff's coming out. So what I would say is, to actually answer your question, yeah, look, Medusa Point will probably be in more laptops because it's a more easy to implement, a more traditional platform than Medusa Halo and Strix Halo are. But I wouldn't just wait for it. I would get what you can now if it's good enough for what you need. Just get the first thing you can as long as it's a decent product. Because by the time Medusa Point comes out, you might have to wait 6 months for the perfect one, right? So just, I don't regret getting Hawk Point a year ago. I don't wish I would have waited a year to get Strix, nor to keep waiting for Gorgon. And think of it this way too. If the perfect Strix Halo product comes out in 3 months and you get it, I know in a year Medusa Point may be out, but then think about that. But then you'll be waiting for, like, what comes after Medusa? I forgot. There's a bunch of rumored stuff. Like, you'll be waiting for the next thing. And what that means is because you've already got Strix Halo, you'll be happy to wait for what comes after Medusa. So that's my advice. Multi Natty writes in and says, "Hi Tom. In your recent leaks about Zen 5 and Zen 6 low power cores, I've been thinking about their use cases. How about a future Steam Deck with 2 or even 4 low power cores that the OS defaults into using them for idle tasks and have ARM-like features while being able to download games in sleep mode? You said that these LP cores are just basically low power performance cores, right? They're not right. These low power cores with Zen 6, they're not LPE cores like Meteor Lake. They're LPP cores that can do everything and have hyperthreading. But he says the reason I use Steam Deck as an example is because I have more faith in Valve on implementing custom features with the OS and different cores that work than Windows will. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, the low power cores, let's wait and see how they work, right? But I think there's a real option here. Like, if AMD really has these like Zen 6 low power cores that manage to hit potentially like almost Zen 5 IPC while using 1 watt, that's what I would put in the Steam Deck too. 8 of those, 8 watts total for the CPU. God, you'd be using less energy than the quad core in the Steam Deck probably. And like, if you like power optimize them for a handheld, just for Valve with the OS knowing what it's using and how to use them the most efficiently, yeah, I think you could really, I think they could make the Steam Deck 2 have the same power consumption, but its graphics get even more of the pie this time because they're low power cores. I think that'd be really interesting. But we'll have to see. I don't know. We still need to see how well the LP cores really work. Some of what I was excited about was a little bit of speculation. And so let's make sure they perform as well as we've heard they could, and as I think they might, before we double down on the Steam Deck using it. Lucas writes in and says, I'm sure plenty of people will be buying Strix Halo regardless, but Apple just made a splash with their 512 gigabyte RAM Mac Studio. Will AMD, or anyone else for that matter, respond to that? Or is it so low volume that the AI bubble is about to pop anyway and that the industry just lets Apple have a win? Look, I think Medusa Halo, I've already leaked it can have a 384-bit bus of LPDDR6. So that's a lot of capacity right there. Right? They should conceivably be able to move to at least like what, 384 gigabytes of RAM or something insane. I don't know. I think they're going to go for that probably with Medusa Halo, but I don't see AMD clamshelling and trying to make a 512 gigabyte Strix Halo Studio now. I don't. I think they're happy that they have 128 gigabyte models. They'll supposedly write rumors, or they'll get to 192 gigabytes eventually. I think that's probably enough for the overwhelming majority of people. And by the time they had some weird 512 gigabyte model, it'll probably be on Medusa anyways, and they'll just probably use that. All right. So I think I've gotten through all of the Patreon questions and all of the tipped questions. So I guess I'll say, I'll probably do this for another 5 to 10 minutes, maybe. Um, any more questions, people? Put in the tips now, or of course, as always, if you are in the Moore's Law is Dead Discord, which again, access to for $2 a month, drop a question in the after video chat channel right now. I'll answer it for free if I see an interesting one. So let's let those start compiling. Da-da-da. So wait, what did this person say here? This person's heard of. Oh no. Okay. Sorry, I was just looking at something a source just sent me. All right, let's see. Da-da-da. Now, another source just got back to me too. Um, this is adding on to what I've already leaked. 9060 XT definitely launching this month. So again, probably April 24th or a week after that. Also, a source is telling me, yeah, most 5060 Ti's are going to be above $500, like I leaked. So just further confirmation of what I said. But oof, there you go. Uh, Thoughts on no? Did I have thoughts on that headset? Are the chips going to get overproduced anytime? Older nodes seem like they have too much capacity, actually. So we already have that happening a little bit. How does the 9060 XT stack up against the 5060 Ti? Well, I already answered that. And it'll probably be right. It'll probably be like 10% weaker, 5% weaker, pretty close, probably. Uh, either I had a 9070 XT for a few weeks, blah blah blah. See any interesting questions here. Someone I says tacos. Great content. Let's see here. Yeah, people following this inside the industry and the Moore's Laws at Discord are talking about it now. Yeah, expect severe shortages in Q3. Yeah. Will Zen 6 be worth putting on an X670 motherboard? DDR5 issues. I don't know what you mean by DDR5 issues. Are you saying you're having issues with your motherboard? Yes, it will be. I mean, again, here's what it comes down to, though. It might be able to run faster memory on your X670 motherboard because it's Zen 6. I mean, Zen 3 ran faster memory than Zen 2 on the same motherboards for the most part. The Zen 5 just had problems with its memory controller. So yeah, Zen 6 will probably run the same RAM. Well, I should say the same RAM. Will be able to run faster RAM more easily. And again, I think this is a big misconception here too. We'll have to see how dependent on faster memory Zen 6 is. But from what I'm seeing with its redesigned memory controller, right? I think people have heard me leak stuff about the Zen 6 memory controller. And they're like, oh, Tom says it has a redesigned memory controller, so it'll be faster. Well, no, that also probably means it can make do with less bandwidth, right? It's better at using the bandwidth it has. Zen 5 seems to squander it a little bit. Actually, if you look up Strix Halo reviews, there's almost a Zen 5 Plus. They use different CCDs, different chiplets for Strix Halos, 16 cores. And you can see massive bandwidth boosts. So even with Strix Halo, AMD's overcome some of the bandwidth issues of Zen 5. And so I think, no, you don't have to worry. Like the way I would put it is if you wanted to max out 24 core without Vcache Zen 6, yes, you'll probably want a motherboard that's capable of like DDR5 8000 or something to maximize. But again, maximize it. There's always a bottleneck in your system. If you have a 12 core with Vcache, I think DDR5 6000 will probably be fine. You don't need as much bandwidth when you have Vcache, and Zen 6 will make do with more. So yeah, it's like when you keep thinking about like, do you need this much bandwidth if it's the 12 core model? It's already not a bottleneck for the 16 core Zen 5. You just probably want the fastest RAM for the fastest 24 core model. Let's see here. This is an interesting question. Carol writes, and it says, you suggest that buyers in the US buy the upcoming 9060 XT before prices increase, but in the EU, usually GPUs arrive at their inflated prices a few days later. Do you think we should wait it out instead? Oh, see, this is when it becomes interesting because they will probably some companies, not all, will more easily ship to Europe because you make SoC in Taiwan, assemble in China, right? Some of these AIBs, then you ship to Europe. So I think there's a chance Europe will have less of a reason to go quickly, but there will be supply chain issues. And so I probably wouldn't hesitate because who knows how trade wars could escalate or what could happen. Um, but yeah, I think in Europe you might be less rushed because you can build a whole graphics card and ship it to Europe without the Galaxy Brain tariffs getting in your way for a lot of these AIBs models. So yeah, maybe you'll be less rushed. Congratulations. For once, maybe people in Europe will not be shafted versus the US for a launch. Um, Queen Schism writes in and says, "What is the most exciting leak you've seen so far? At least one that you can talk about." Well, for me, the most exciting leak I think I've ever done was Strix Halo. Like, I'm sorry, like that was a big moment for me when I got that info. Um, you know, we've been waiting for these monster APUs forever. And 2 years ago, when I got those documents showing a 256-bit APU with 40 compute units and 16 cores, I was like, finally. So if your question is what's the leak you've been most excited about, I think it's probably that one. In terms of like what leaks am I sitting on, I usually leak things unless a source tells me not to, pretty much as quickly as I can. I definitely sat on the Zen 6 stuff for a while to protect my sources for that. But like in term like, I think Navi 48 Ultimate is maybe a ringer for the most interesting one. I think maybe that one. But I could be very uninteresting once I get the final info. So, but I would say that one. And there's some Zen 7 stuff that's interesting. And I'm trying to think of like what else there is, like would be the most interesting. But it probably Zen 7 and Navi 48 Ultimate, that type of thing. In the market, where it seems to be. Do I think a 9900X plus an 870 Extreme motherboard plus RAM for 600 is a good deal? Yeah, I mean, that's basically the same deal I got for the Zen 4X 3D motherboard, except you have a 9900X, I have a Zen 4 with Vcache for the same price. But yours comes with RAM, so yeah, I think that's a good deal. What, that's like a $400 CPU plus a $400 motherboard plus RAM for 600. That's a really good deal. $600 for a 12 core Zen 5 with 870 Extreme with RAM. Yes, that's a good deal. I think that's an incredibly good deal. Um, let's see here. Terralius writes in from the Moore's Law Z Discord, which you can get access to for just $2 a month, and says, "Hey Tom, any advice on getting a 5060 Ti? I live near a Micro Center and Best Buy. Need it for dev work. I'll pray to God that you get it. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I guess I could give you this advice. I've heard it's probably online only, and so watch Amazon and Newegg. That's my advice for the 5060 Ti. Watch Amazon and Newegg. I've heard it's mostly online only. If you can get one at a Micro Center, get it, but watch Newegg as well. Like that's probably my best advice I can give you. I almost blew off the question, but I guess I can tell you that. That is valid advice. Lost Trader 07 number 30322, quite a name, says, "Have you already touched base on Threadripper 9000 series? It seems like the 7000 series Threadrippers have been going up in price lately." No, the 9000 series bores me. I leaked the code name for it, didn't I? Shimada, or what was it? I think I leaked the code name for it recently. Haven't I weren't there roadmaps I leaked too that showed like Zen 5 Threadripper was like late 25 or something? Let me see. Threadripper Zen 5 roadmap. Moore's Law is dead. It's always weird when you're able to Google yourself to find things. Let's see what we got. Turin, right. No, that's not the roadmap I'm looking for. Yeah, I mean everything I'm seeing is a Zen 5 Threadripper would be late this year, which I mean, like, I think we could have guessed that, right? Like, just guessing. So, the Threadripper doesn't interest me that much though, because it's like it is epic. We know what it's going to be. It's epic. It's the Threadripper version of Epic. So we know what it's going to be. We know it's going to be very expensive, and we know it's going to come out like a year after the desktop variant. So, yeah, I guess that's what I can tell you right now. What do you think of the rumors that AMD will use Samsung for the IO die for Zen 6 Olympic Ridge? Just speculation. I won't hold you to promise. It makes sense with TSMC's massive backlog. My memory is I was told both nodes were TSMC, at least for the people I know designing Zen 6 right now. But that can change. I mean, you can change nodes, so wouldn't be crazy to me. And I did hear about a 6 nanometer IO die for cheap versions. So who knows if they use Samsung for that? Although, do they really have 6 nanometer? Wouldn't that be 4 or 3 nanometer? What I will say also is AMD doesn't really like Samsung very much. So, uh, let's see. Do you think Nvidia will even return hottest naming to laptop GPUs like they had with Pascal Turing? I don't know what that means. Luga Dragon. All right. I think that's it. I think we're petering out on the questions. I'm petering out on my energy levels. And so let's wrap this up. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Again, please like the video, share the video, comment down below. And right now, when you go away, double check that you're subscribed to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel and join the Patreon. There's a squeeze right now from YouTube funding and a lot of other things. Like, I'm getting hit by the economic issues as well. And so consider joining the Patreon. That is the best way to show support. You'll be supporting me, Dan, Gerard, Carbon Cry, Jean Philippe, a whole team of people at Moore's Law is Dead that depend on this to put food on the table. And so even just joining for $2, $4 a month, depending on what you can afford, you know, if you can afford it, it really, really, really does help, because then that also forces me to prioritize stuff that doesn't depend on advertisers. Like, I wish all of the money came from Patreon, so I never cared about ads in my life, and we could just make more, just make more content that worries about the content, not about when it has to come out, if it fits some sort of, ad requirement. But anyways, again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, everybody, and have a good weekend.